Awesome. Hello. This is another session of the Sensor Journalism series. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. This series, we can explore different aspects of
Are others having trouble hearing Lily? No, we're having trouble hearing you, Lily.
I am as well, yes.
Okay, I think she's cut out. So until Lily gets back, I'll just get us started off here. This series is an informal hangout that's co-hosted by Lily and myself with the OK Cast. And each weekend in March, we're exploring different aspects of sensor-enabled journalism by bringing together speakers who have worked with sensors and storytelling in some capacity to discuss the key issues in the field. So all of these sessions, including this one, will be archived and made available on sensorjournalism.okcast.org. And at the end of this series, we hope to have built a compendium of information about sensor journalism, co-created by the people who are collaboratively working in this space. We want to make a special thank you to our media partners, the Earth Journalism Network, and UC Berkeley's Citrus Center for helping us promote these events. So with that being said, I want to introduce to you Yodit Stanton, who is the CEO and founder of OpenSensors.io, and she's here to talk a little bit about the Internet of Things and her startup that's making data from devices on the Internet of Things easily accessible. So, Yodit, why don't you kick us off and go while we wait for Lily to get back in.
Am I back? Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
I think I'm back. Okay, awesome. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to you. I'm currently having technology issues.
Oh, we've got Rob now, too. Woohoo.
Oh, and we have Rob. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly introduce you, Rob. We have Rob von Kranenberg, who's the author of The Internet of Things and also runs InternetofThings.eu. And so he's going to be talking us about the different scales of something that are involved with smart cities.
Okay, so you want me, so I'm going to start now.
Oh no, Yodit's going to start, and then we're going to have you go.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Lily and Alex for inviting me. So just as a bit of background, my name is Yodit. I am a software developer. I've been creating kind of real-time systems for the last 12 years or so. I also have built a lot of quant and algo systems, so I'm into data. And I run a group called Women in Data. So for those of you that are interested. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do, but also why we do it. And I think whilst we work in the Internet of Things, I think smart cities to me is a thing that kind of keeps me up at night because I worry about all the things that are going on. I'm going to share my worries and maybe some solutions, but I'm going to also leave a lot of questions unanswered. So, if I can switch to my slides now. Can you guys see that? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, as Alex said, I run Open Sensors. Wired called us the Twitter for sensors, which is kind of catchy, and people now, after all these years, seem to understand what I do. So it's really a real-time exchange for connected devices. And obviously today we're talking all about smart cities. And I'm going to start with kind of throw a bit of fire out there around smart cities. And what worries me is the reality versus marketing. I think the domain is really exciting, but it is kind of turning into a bit of a ridiculous situation of kind of really large tech companies selling this idea of the Jetsons overnight and really asking for a lot of money for very simple solutions and things that I've personally noticed about smart cities projects is is the cost, firstly. They all seem to be in the tens of millions rather than kind of in small iterative projects, just large enterprise, the solutions that we should have abandoned maybe from the 90s. We kind of know how to build software products these days that are smaller, more iterative, but why we're kind of not taking those lessons and applying them to smart cities, I don't really know. The other problem is that data lives in the silos of the companies that are kind of pitching smart cities solutions. So data is very much not being reused. We're kind of locking things up in databases, and if they're available, they're available like 3 months at a time. So imagine kind of air quality data being available in 3 months' time in CSV format, but not in real time. And lastly, which is kind of the biggest problem that I find with smart cities, is the fact that it seems to be a solution looking for a problem. There isn't a discussion around value to users, and users at this point is citizens. A lot of the ones I see don't seem to consider them in the design. So we are kind of at least trying to be, whilst we won't put together the whole solution, what we're trying to propose is that at least for the data, that smart cities data in the public space should be, or at least a lot of it should be available as open data. For those of you that don't know, open data is the premise put forward by Stanton, founder of the web, a few years ago, and he set up the Open Data Institute, where our startup is incubated. And open data basically says, just like open source projects, that data is available with licenses for reuse for other people. It's as simple as that. You can ask people to credit you, so that's called attribution, or you can say it's also under share alike. So if you release the data, people can improve it, but they can share it with other people. Just like open data licenses, just like open source licenses, there are several types of open data licenses. And for us, the premise is all around creating a free flow of information, and the idea that if you're going to put sensors out on the street, such as air quality data, you're hardly going to have the same hardware on the street owned by multiple companies. So why don't people reshare, reuse, and do something meaningful with it? And when it comes to smart cities, usually when we talk about sensors, there's an investment. You're paying for infrastructure, whether that's connectivity, or also the hardware side. So I think, to me, I think smart cities and open data really kind of go well together, and I would like to see more projects out there kind of resharing and reusing the data. Another thing that worries me is the design of smart cities. So this is kind of the addressing the issue of kind of large, really expensive projects that keep coming up. So I would propose that we hold a model of designing cities around the design principles put forward by the Government Digital Services. So for context, the Government Digital Service in the UK was created some years ago to create services by central government. It's been hugely successful. It's kind of really revolutionized the way government services are put to citizens, and it's won loads of awards. And I think they have some really solid design principles behind what they've done so far. And I'm not going to read through the whole thing, and people can find it in gov.uk design principles. But The first really design principle is starting with user needs. Like I said, no one seems to know what a smart city really is. I hate that term anyway, but it is. We don't seem to be kind of going back to first principles of what problem are we trying to solve, and I'd like to see this more. And sometimes the problem isn't just because of the technologists, it's just that there seems to be a gap in language between technologists and people in municipalities and local authorities, and just the way kind of the domains are specified aren't clear. The second design principle that GGS have put forward is to provide resources like APIs. And this is really saying we're going to do the minimal that we can, and we're going to provide APIs for these services. And if and let's create a market around these services so that people can add more services if they need to, or really customize it for kind of small edge cases, rather than building every case possible. And I think that's wise. It's the way that we've been creating systems for in recent times, and I love seeing this kind of stuff in use for government. Like I said, I'm not going to read through all of the designs, but I think one of the things that is obviously the thing we're trying to solve is make things open, so make data open, and let people reuse the data. But also, I think I'd like to see from smart cities projects, I'd like to see more cases where the code itself is open. So even if we kind of invest in a project in one city, hopefully another city can port the code and they can do it cheaper, and they can even maybe even make it better, and kind of seeing this type of design coming out by default. So this is actually a mad example that I've faced recently when we were trying to help Westminster Council deal with their parking sensor data. So you'd think, sensor data should be easy. You install some sensors in the ground, and then data is stored in some database, and hopefully there's an API. But that's not what happened actually. The sensor device, so because of this kind of crazy procurement process that governments go through, 7 companies were between the sensor and the output. And we're in London, Westminster's in London. It took 3 months to get the data. It's not just an issue for us, it's also an issue for them. They can't see the data day to day. They have to kind of, they can see maybe kind of a web dashboard, but really if they want to get to the raw data, they have to go through many, many vendors and try to track it down. And it's a state of play that actually shows the reality of what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with kind of really complicated systems. So there are so many low-hanging fruits, and if we can solve these problems, then the smart city ideal will solve itself. If we can enable people in municipalities and local governments to do their jobs easily, then really kind of the rest, I think, my theory is the rest will take care of itself. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a commons around sensor data. Any real-time data people should be able to subscribe to and share. We have the idea of kind of topics that are like URIs, and people can embed them, or they can subscribe to feeds, and people can ingest real-time feeds, and they can also filter the data that they want rather than getting a whole fire hose of real-time data, and they can do whatever they like with them. They can create automations or services or dashboards, and really what I see our role is creating some sort of bottom-up smart city rather than like a huge, top-down smart city, which is, in my opinion, will never happen. I see these sales pitches from for big top-down smart cities projects, and usually, this kind of looks like Star Trek, and there's a control room, and usually there's a mayor or something that kind of looks at traffic information or something. It's a picture that will probably never happen, and I don't really want it to happen because that doesn't put us in touch with people and their real problems. And so this is my kind of call to arms to everyone out there. Let's design solutions for problems of today. I mean, if we can make boring things like road gritters in the winter, find problem spots, and not have as many road gritters on the in depots, and save the government a bit of money. Great, that is a smarter city. I don't know if it's smart, but it's smarter than it is now. If we can encourage people to maybe drive less, because by showing them the congestion data and by showing traffic and parking data in real time, great. Or if we can encourage, there's a school in Anfield that we're putting a project with. They're just putting air quality monitors around the schools, and they're putting them in front of parents so that parents can see the data about air quality and the effects it has, and then they hopefully can encourage people by showing them the realities of their actions, then to drive less and to walk their kids to school and that kind of thing. So there are so many problems that we can solve. I'd like to see more of these solutions, and I always say the next kind of Google or Facebook the next Facebook is not going to be a social media company, or the next Google is not going to be a search company. I think if IoT, especially in cities, and really solving these large-scale problems, I look forward to the technology companies or the companies of the future that are going to bring these out. So things that we haven't figured out really for smart cities, and maybe we can talk about these later, or people can create discussions about them, is if we're going to put all these sensors and we're going to connect up these cities, which is happening. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that this age is coming. Who's going to maintain them? If we're going to put parking sensors everywhere, great. Who's going to be the guy in the van that's going to make sure that these sensors, if they run out of battery or they break, which they will, who's going to change it? Who's going to maintain it? Whose job is it? And who pays for it? Who pays for this infrastructure? Who pays for this technology? Not just in the initial deployment, but day to day, month to month. There's a lot of data being ingested. There doesn't seem to be much discussion around the business models around this stuff, and it is very, very important for startups, and it's also very important and not making this stuff creepy, right? Like, we kind of need to be quite honest about how this stuff is going to be maintained. And what my biggest bugbear is, how do we make it iterable so that when new technology comes out, we're not kind of ripping out parking sensors out of the ground and starting again. Like, how can we make sure that the design takes into account the fact that this stuff will degrade quite quickly, and how do we upgrade a smart city in a way that's kind of manageable and not crazy, and not have lots of outages. And I think there's also another discussion to be had around bridging the gap between the people that actually have designed the cities originally, who are architects and city planners, and computer scientists that are kind of pushing the boundaries and creating all these programmable connected cities. There's a lot of historical context around why certain things happened. And really, computer science, we're coming in, we're kind of the new kids on the block, and we're nearly we can be fairly arrogant in most domains. We kind of know, we think we know the answer, but really we're not we're not taking the historical context into account most times. So it's how do we kind of bring these people together? Is the things that I would like at some point someone to give me an answer to. So on that, I end with, I think, a successful possibly implementation, still early days, which is Bristol in the UK. They're creating what's called a programmable city, which I'm really excited about. We're part of it. We're at the IoT platform. But so the way that they've gone about it is they are investing in the fiber optic networks, in the hardware. They own the hardware, and they've just rolled out a massive amount of infrastructure. But they're leaving the services to the development communities, to the communities, and their aim is to create an ecosystem and a marketplace around really kind of the city, the services around the city, whilst taking the kind of the hard problems and trialing out lots of interesting solutions. And I'd kind of and obviously I like them because everything's going to be open. It's going to be an open data project, and I'm really, really excited about this. So this is hopefully going to be the kind of the great test case, and hopefully ones that we can implement in other cities in the years to come. So thank you very much, and that's me. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we can now talk. That's my spiel. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Yodit. I think you brought up a lot of relevant issues that many people working within the smart cities space are trying to grapple. We're going to move on to Rob, but I think it's a nice transition that you ended with that set of questions, because I think a big part of understanding how to make smart cities iterable is to understand the scale at which smart technologies affect whatever context they're designed for. And that's exactly what Rob is going to be talking about. So Rob, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't have slides because I think I'm going well, basically I fully agree with the what has been said. And well, just maybe one question. Can I ask a question for the first, to go back to Bristol? Because is this built on mobile Bristol?
This is the Bristol's open project. I can put a link there, but I'm not sure what mobile Bristol is. But,
it's interesting because basically in the mid-90s, HP set up this. I think they did the first experiments with Jonah Brooker-Cohen. I think they were working there, a lot of artists, interactive artists. It was called Mobile Bristol, and they were sort of in the first sort of round of mesh networking and sort of setting up networks in the city. And so there's a huge history to what Bristol has been doing in that sphere, and also saw like the watershed sort of in the picture. So yes. I think that's also like a very important hub for what's going on there. So there's a kind of technical context, I would think, to Bristol that could be could be sort of part of the fact that they have now moved to this notion of programmable city.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about the historical context, but I think yes, it's definitely an interesting one because they're including everyone. They're including the mobile providers, such as BT and the network providers and Telefonica, but also they're not just doing serious projects. They're doing the playable cities, which is kind of trying to create interactions between people in the cities. So it's not just, oh, we're going to solve these kind of hard but boring problems. There's I think there's a lot of thought being done. So maybe it's an iteration of what's been done before and the thinking from the university and so on. So, yes.
No, thanks, because I think, so picking up on what you've been saying, I think there's three sort of main strands. I think the first is this notion of common sense that we sort of all have, and then we are looking at this and thinking sort of what is going on, how is this possible? I mean, but I always keep thinking about the fact that the browser is like, I think it's 1993, so we're 2015, so it's like 22 years old, and then sort of let's say ARPANET, the net sort of like, let's say 50, but the browser, as most people know, the internet is like only 20 years old. So then if we look at the history of what is now Internet of Things, like ambient intelligence, Philips in 2000, pervasive computing, IBM, Ubicom, Xerox Spark, cybernetics, like 60s, 70s, Stafford Beer, Norbert Wiener. So it's clear that this is like a 40, 50-year-old operation that is that has had different names, and that is now sort of really actualizing itself because of the fact that there is a cloud. So all the talks in the 90s in computing were about database storage and the fact that it was so expensive you could not do anything. So all these iterations that the engineers have thought up about smart gadgets, smart infrastructures, and a kind of connectivity environment, they were there from the 60s. And sort of in all closed environments, they were totally also fulfilled, I would say. So I think what we're dealing with is a kind of intelligence that has out-optimized every closed environment in the world. So there's not one factory that you can do, well, you can do a little bit more predictive maintenance, which is sort of now the key nickel and dime operation in Internet of Things from an industrial point of view. But basically, all these closed environments have become out-optimized, over efficiency. And so now this type of intelligence is sort of is looking at the world, seeing this huge open space, and thinking, no, we're going to have to sort of close that down. So to me, the notion of the smart city really is a meme, is a cultural meme that is meant for us, citizens, to start believing that the epitaph of being human is also to be efficient with all our trackers and wearables and stuff like that, to be optimized, to adapt ourselves to optimized environments, and to sort of believe that this is also life, and this is sort of the most important thing in life, to be efficient, to be optimized, to sort of, as Hal says in the movie, sort of I'm actualizing all my capabilities, and isn't this what sort of life is sort of all about? So this is, I think, the first thing that we really have to see, why we, coming from different points of view than computer scientists, I would say, talking for me, have looked at this space with huge wonder for the past 15, 20 years, and thought, well, how on earth is this possible? I mean, where is the common sense basically in all of this? But this is not the right question. When I was asking questions like this, because I think what is Internet of Things at the moment is kind of this triangle between us pulling. So we cannot sort of escape the fact that we all have probably our mobile phones quite handy now, and we are actually talking in this way. So we cannot say it's just pure tech push, because we are really in there as well. We're pulling. But the two main drivers, let's say RFID, this ecology of barcodes, QR codes, RFID, near-field communication coming to you soon, individuating all objects on the planet, that's quite something. And the other driver, IP46, meaning sort of IP and basically anything that holds a little bit of software, in the totally new cheapness of hardware, software, database storage, and analytics, is indeed fueling this situation in which we have to say, well, we're in it, sort of, we're in the middle. And then sort of, this is, to me, was always very strange in effect, because I'm working now in European project, and I'm also talking with a lot of researchers there, and I had to come to the conclusion that in 2015, in basically not one of the European smart city projects of the past 30 years, end users have been involved in use cases. And this is really it's quite crazy. It's really insane. It's been hundreds of millions of euros. And but basically, even up until now, all the use cases have been defined beforehand. Then 2 or 3 years later, a project actually goes. You get the description of work, and everybody's description of work. And then sort of the users actually are basically out there in the end, but they're also mostly developers and not people, end users that are not sort of there. So we're trying to change this, and in the project that we're working on, but it's quite strange that we have to sort of even consider changing the situation in 2015. Yet this is the case, and we have to be realistic. So then I go to the second point, where you basically talk about iterable cities and about this use case that you just explained with the 7 actors in between the data and the actual sort of you or the people sort of. But to me, this also is to me it really shows the extreme sadness of the situation in which we have lived up until now. So if we look into the book, let's say the Gutenberg Bible, 1452, where it was in Europe, we had 3 million people, 60,000 people in London. The kings and the queens and the priests could have made everybody literate by 1500, but they didn't. And if I ask, can I read a book in 1600, I'd be burned. I'd be jailed in 1700. So if we look at the first public library in Europe, let's say first public library in Holland or Belgium, it's 1918. So free book lending in the UK is 1918. So raw power stalls distributing learning tools for over 450 years. And this is the situation basically in which we're in. So we come from this very, very strange fluke, which was the TCP/IP protocol in the ARPANET internet, that actually brought this sort of open line through the world. And if governments and companies had known what is going on now, they would have killed it immediately. So basically, it's in a way. So what I'm constantly seeing, I see all these non-intrinsic blockades in the flow everywhere, in every city, huge silos. I see so many non-intrinsic arguments in these smart city debates. Actually, only last week I got told that very simple, good common sense plans simply could not work, because in one city there was one big company and it was sort of housed there, and that was the reason I had to work with this company. And then there was another city that had another big company. This was in the same country, and they had to work with that company because it was in the street next to them. And you can say, of course, coming the way that we argue these things is like, look, if you want this to work, you need interoperability. You need to iterate these things. We need smart parking to work in Madrid. We also want smart parking to work in London. I mean, but it's these types of, to us, very common sense arguments are not hacking it. So basically, also I see, coming sort of to the third point, that the only persons that are really, really relevant in this space at the moment are the people who disrupt it. And so this means that coming from the point of view that you're ending with, which I totally agree on, trying to come up with open source enablers for smart city types of situations, which I think we should reiterate as like an internet of neighborhoods. I think so. If we get the smart city as we fully agree, is a meme, is a sales pitch. It's and although I'm not really sure that it will not be there, because it will be there, but it will be there for 10,000 or 15,000 people as gated communities for very rich people. And they're actually being built at the moment. So 60% of all the building in the United States is gated, and it's growing. So we will see these smart cities, but they will probably be heavily militarized zones for people who actually can afford to live in there, and all the investments is going away from the middle, as it's basically happening everywhere. So what we are facing is a kind of ecology of a closed set of actors, which is basically Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, now introducing Pay, quite logically following Line in Asia, IBM, sort of Cisco, which are going to the mayors of the cities trying to sell their dashboards and platforms. And if they manage to get their hands on the raw data in the cities, then indeed citizens will be paying twice. First they've paid with public money for the data, and now they're going to pay again to the people who then are sort of adding value to that data in their system, not in the public system, but in a corporate way. So I think the fight will be, and the fight is now, between I'd say a set of actors that are going for the closed and a set of actors that go for the open. And the way this is being done is quite simple, because I think the Internet of Things is linking up the networks. So you have a body area network where you have a lot of wearables. You have the home local area network where you have your smart meter. You have the wide area network where you have the car, and you have the very wide area network where you have the city or the smart city. So if you look at these four and look at what Google is doing, so Google has two ways into the body, the glass and the lens. It's like a military operation. Then you go home and then you sync your data into your home sort of fog infrastructure, not going all the time to the cloud. They had a power meter, but didn't work, so they bought Nest, which woke everybody up because they spent $2 billion on it. Then, going home with my home data, my body data, my health in my home, I go into my car. Well, they have a car. They have their own car. They're in 2 or 3 out of the automotive associations, and they're in Gmail and YouTube. So you can never, ever buy a car that does not have Google in it. Then they're in every library in the world. They're sponsoring every open data initiative they can find their hands on. You dream of an open data project on a Monday, and you get a mail on Tuesday, and saying they will sponsor. So, and of course, they're teaming up, and they are choosing the partners on these gateways because their products are hubs. The products are the gateways linking up the network. Now, I, as a citizen, as an end user, I'm not going to pay a group or an ecology of a consortia of providers for my health, and a different set of providers from my home, and a different set of providers from my mobility data, and a different set of providers from what's left of the smart city, which is going to become a set of services. No, I'm going to pay to whoever's able to offer me the best scenario based on all these data sets. So this is what Google is doing. And Vint Cerf, who was one of the key people for the internet, he wrote about no-bots already in '88 together with Bob Kahn. And a no-bot for Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, '88, was a organizational entity able to reflect upon itself, which to me spells out that Google, for them, was a use case. And the way that they've been doing their investments, going into energy, going into the car, going into the glass and lens very, very quickly, is simply telling that this is what they are doing. Because whoever is able to safely, securely link up these gateways is de facto the new power. So this means that at this moment, I would say there is this whole notion of democracy as we knew it is really totally gone. The whole new debate, it's not even a debate, it's basically about the infrastructure, the gateways, the hubs, and the data. And this is how we see that Google then is acting itself as a kind of over-the-top player on this data, linking up with the other ones, Uber, Airbnb, farm logs in the United States. Already 20% of all the raw crop data are in their databases. 2 guys setting up a small company 2 or 3 years ago with, I think, 3 servers they started. So this is basically, I think, what's happening at the moment. And so what we have to do is we have to set up a firm and secure open alternative to this. So we have to build gateways, open source gateways. And unfortunately, we simply have to copy this model because I believe there's no other alternative. There's no way to fight this because there's, like you said also, it's happening and we're in it, it's air. So we cannot simply start hacking it because we have to take over the entire infrastructure, the entire system. I think it's perfectly doable. I mean, Google is 15 years old, 2 guys with a patch on the search engine. Facebook actually managed to start with a founder that called his first users Dumb Fox. So I mean, this is really sort of it's not that we, with a lot more intelligence and a lot more ethics and integrity, I would say, could not sort of do this ourselves. So this is basically what I think is happening and what friends and we are trying to do. So we're trying to build these solutions to to the body, to the home, to the car, to the building device-centric solutions, blockchain type of solutions. These are all happening out there at the moment. Data entitlement type of solutions. And one of the key building blocks that we are working on is a project called DAOs, which is run by Dynorg, which is about building a box that is reading out to layer 2. So you plug it into your home, you read out everything that goes in, goes out. It offers you a potential to sort of close down your home when you want it, but we want to see it as the building block to offer to a community or to a neighborhood and say, this is the building block in which we think we can build a real trustworthy Internet of Things. Now what will happen then is we'll put a kind of platform on there in which the community, where there is trust, because you do also see people there in real life, or potential for trust, can start sharing goods, can start sharing cars, sharing tools, sharing food, all the things that are happening now in basically lots and lots and lots and lots of places. So this is a kind of transition down type of idea plus technology. So it's not antagonistic. It's using the bottom up energy that's really happening, but it's trying to tell them, look, don't worry about these smart city type of things. Don't invest energy against that. Don't worry about this privacy security nonsense. It's gone already. We simple people have no more already. We never had anything like that. Imagine even in the 1600s, we couldn't even ask for reading a book in our own language. So this is basically where we come from. So the type of agency that we have now is massive, is huge. So we need to align on that. So basically, sort of looking at all of that, I would say we're on track. I mean, we cannot be blamed for the immense nonsensicality of the types of business protocols and patent systems and violence in these systems that these people have built on their set to satisfy their ego, or to have like hundreds of millions of euros or dollars in banks and sort of count their money all the time or something like that. This is not our fault. We cannot remedy that as well. What we do see is that a lot of people are fed up, and that most people, I would say, let's call it then the 99%, are really, really fed up. So I think it's our job to align all these groups and all these people that are in this open data, open innovation, open hardware, open software, open line, and tell them that there's agency, and tell them not to be afraid. There's nothing basically to be afraid of. We know that these smart city solutions that have been pushed, they cannot succeed. But also the people that I talk to in the Ciscos of this world, they know that they cannot succeed. But what they've done for the past 50 years, they've been hiring people like us to help them to still bridge the fact that they could not really succeed. But we would make it presentable. We could design this type of sort of potential dialogue into the system while not really inviting people in. And this is what we're not doing anymore. And why are we not doing this anymore? Because of the internet for the past 20 years has offered us now the potential to basically set up our own Skypes like this, Hangouts. We set up our own information hubs like Council. We set up our own networks like Bricolabs. There's hundreds of networks out there from hacker activists, all type of networks. People started their businesses and now are selling millions of boards like Arduino. We have huge amount of startups that are no longer in need of the Ciscos of this world because we actually are seeing, because of this Internet of Things, and Cisco is seeing this too, that they're 50% overpriced, basically, or let's say 40%, or I really don't know how much, but let's say hugely overpriced. Because indeed, like you've also been saying, most of this is not rocket science. Most of this is radio, is sensors and actuators, and the sort of the real intelligence may lie in the database and the algorithms, but the real intelligence is what you actually do with it. And this, I can actually, well, assure you, most people actually in these smart city projects have no clue. And they also never had to have a clue because they've been doing this for closed environments, for very, very specific use cases. And as they now go into the open space, calling this smart territory, we should not be fooled. We should not go with their, like you say, we should not go with their notions. Because these are not viable. Yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really good time right now to move into the question and answer session, because a lot of the things that you're bringing up, I'd love to open up to a dialogue with everyone else who's part of this session. So, Michael, I think I probably got cut off when I got bumped off the internet. So Michael is the co-founder of Qualia Networks, which is an open IoT hardware and machine learning technology company in North Carolina. Is going to be moderating this part of the session, and he has some questions prepared. Alex will also kind of jump in, but I also want to encourage both you and Yodit to ask questions of each other, because I find that a lot of the things that both of you have mentioned about smart cities and sensing are in dialogue with each other directly. So it'd be great if you, if you had questions for each other to ask them right now too. So I'm going to let Michael kick off. And then also I'm going to be keeping an eye on our Q&A app on the left. So we have a few people joining us today. If you guys have questions, feel free to submit them, and then we'll throw those in as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Lily. Hi, Rob. Hi, Yodit. I've got a question for both of you. Both of you are very interested in solving problems of today with technologies that are currently available. Myself, as a citizen in a city that champions the open data, open government, open source ideas, Raleigh, what I would want to know is, as a citizen, how can I participate in building smart city apps?
So I can start. I mean, I think for me, there's still a technical barrier, because obviously even with the open data movement, you're kind of talking about kind of APIs and not necessarily easy to use tools. So there is a higher barrier that I would like, but hopefully, I mean, it takes community, and I think once the community evolves around these kind of services, I'm hoping that we will build the tools to make it really easy. And we should, because we should make these data sets embeddable or downloadable, and have kind of much more plug-and-play solutions than that exist at the moment. But I'm quite optimistic, I have to say, because there seems to be a real movement growing around it, so this is an answer, but it's coming. It's my but I don't know. It's what about you, Rob? What do you think?
Well, I think so. For me, basically, if this Internet of Things is going to work, then it means that sort of people will get the best feedback on their health, the best feedback on their mental and physical health, the best feedback on resource allocations in their homes, the best feedback on how resources in streets and energy and how this can all be sort of streamlined and optimized. Because the best sort of link between what I need locally and what I can have globally. So for me, basically, it's about talent. And it's about this huge waste of talent that we have now as people, sort of all being sort of on our own in these homes, in these apartments, sort of like, and then when sort of with flukes happen, and when people meet sort of by incident or whatever, then there's all kinds of situations and things like that. But I think that the way people that we're all living in these cities at the moment. And I'm talking a lot to people, to city managers and officials, and sort of like, is gone way out of control. In terms of the coldness in the cities, is immense. Sort of nobody's actually looking at anybody anymore in all these cities, and if you smile at people, people think you're totally insane. And so I don't know what has happened sort of in the past 20, 30 years or something, but it seems that sort of with this we lose this kind of conviviality, sort of this notion of sort of this kind of there's no more oil in the air, there's no more, everything's very tough. But we've been doing this also because we've outsourced as citizens everything to institutions and to, for example, the police, or sort of when something happens, as your neighbor is a bit noisy, people call the police. There's no more going down and talk and so. So we've lost the ability to talk as people. These sort of the little things, sort of the little moments of where we would like to confront people. There's no more confrontation. Now the younger generation is even worse because they're on their phones, not even asking people for directions in the streets anymore. So they've totally lost the ability, it seems, sort of to actually go and talk and have to have this kind of confrontation. So if we're not careful, we're going into an environment where we have no more real interaction in public space, outsourcing everything to institutions. And then if I talk to police, if I talk to, then they say, well, people like us to take over this role. People want all the cameras. People want that we respond. People want, which is also true. So I think we're in a kind of very important moment where I want to sort of use all this technology in order to create more awareness, more cohesion, more small types of conflict that actually can be solved at one particular moment in time. Then outsourcing this sort of like so, for example, about with I think it's exactly as you already been saying. This is about mundane, banal things. We are basically all very, very mundane, banal people. I'm not gonna jump out the window and fly now, right? Which would be amazing, but I'm not gonna do that. So I'm probably gonna have another cup of coffee and I'll go to sleep, and then the morning. So which is what we're all gonna do. So so let's take the neighborhood. Where's the stress? Tomorrow morning, the stress in my street will be 60 people trying to get their kid to school, and they're all parking in the street, and there's be a lot of aggravation, noise, and lots of people, and lots of stress. So what if we could actually have this kind of Internet of Neighborhood type of dashboard stuff, where we could convince fathers and sort of mothers and say, look, we have like 3 or 4 students, they can bike all the kids to school, and we can sort of we can monitor them and even film them if you want, whatever sort of stay home, let the kids bike to school, and we'll organize that and sort of like. And then the next point for a lot of stress is people need to go shopping, and then they all go shopping, and they all go. So there's a lot of people going shopping, and so why cannot we organize a little bit of collaborative shopping in a neighborhood? I mean, I think this is quite logical, sort of one point, sort of. So all these things we can do, and I think the reason why we can do them now is also because if you want to share your car, we can monitor that car and we know when it breaks down. So that the monitoring aspect doesn't have to be a control surveillance aspect. It can actually be an aspect of building trust of your own goods in a particular community. And I see all these things happening. So I think this is why I really believe that we should not argue against all these cameras. Let's just let everybody install more cameras. Let them all install more sensors, and let us just take over the whole sensors. So let us open the range of people that are actually looking at all the data behind that, and that I think is going to be our key message.
I'm not sure if my microphone is on or off.
Yes. Gotcha.
So we got a question in from Raphael, who's asking about how we back up or justify or reinforce the results of censored journalism studies against government data. And I'm wondering what your both thoughts are on that. And I think on maybe to add to that too, what's at stake for government sensing data? As smart cities are enabling more kind of individualized sensing of people. kind of versus the sensing from non-government parties? That's a double-loaded question. I was just trying to summarize the question from Raphael in a different way, too.
Okay. I mean, so there's an interesting example for the first question, which is around what happens when people kind of independently start monitoring and censor journalists start kind of monitoring the data. That there was an environmental group in the UK, in London actually, that put sensor moats, air quality sensor moats around the kind of the major busy streets around London. And what they found, so usually the kind of the official government monitoring stations are on top of buildings, like really high, and people rolled out ones kind of low on street level. And the interesting thing was that some of the particulate matters were like 50% higher than the EU regulation. So the mayor at the time was faced with basically fines. I mean, they weren't really very impressed, and so there is a sense of I think there is a bigger picture of I see of holding government to account around what is efficient, you know, one, efficiency, and two, around kind of health and well-being. So the potential is great. It's just how we. There's a few, I suppose, barriers in our way. One is, ensuring the quality of the hardware, and I think that's still work in progress. For air quality, they're not. If you hold them against scientific ones, they're not obviously comparable, and you can't officially kind of challenge a government body using a kind of a cheaper air quality sensor. So it's really kind of there's a maturity to be had. But again, I don't doubt that it will happen. And maybe it's just that if we have more, for example, air quality sensors out, we can the kind of the ubiquity of the sensor would make the accuracy question mute. I'm not sure. There's research to be done, but it's quite exciting. That example came up quite quickly anyway, so I can't remember the second question.
That's okay. I think that got to an answer, actually, to the question Raphael had posed, for sure.
Yeah.
Rob, did you want to comment on that too, or?
Well, sort of, yeah, because I've been, I think, one of the most surprising things of the last 15 years for me is sort of that I haven't, up until yet, I have not found really evil in this space. So I find a lot of people who are really wanting to sort of think that they're doing good things. They're building good infrastructure. They are helping, and sort of. So I don't come across people with some kind of evil agenda or building the matrix or whatever. Because even when you actually start explaining this might be possible, it's not going to. But what I do find is that this is really a big shift. So this is, to me, it's like fire or the book or the Industrial Revolution. So not everybody gets it. And also, it's just new teams building. So you find people in government, people in intelligence services, people in all kinds of places, hackers, activists, etc. And these people actually, they find each other in understanding this new ontology, which is this new Internet of Things. Once we go into a world that's fully sort of online or monitored, it's no longer this analog notion of like the object, the subject. No. There's always going to be a third party involved in whatever we're going to do. This is really new. It is really new, and we're living the first iteration. And so the people who are actually helping to build this, some people understand that they're helping to build this new iteration. You don't have to go transhumanist or esoteric just in order to think this. But it's very mundanely you realize that this is happening, and the other people don't. And I think I can work with the people who sort of get it, and I can also work with people who don't get it. But it's a different way of working there. And what is interesting, for example, I had a meeting with people from the intelligence services, and they came out with like 5 big threat scenarios, and 2 of them were do-it-yourself biology, and the other 2 were the total breakdown of society as we sort of as they know it. And it was their analysis that the sort of the democratic analog infrastructure systems that we have are in no way capable of dealing with the digital. And this, of course, goes back to now Bradley Manning being in jail, and Snowden and Assange, and sort of all these things, and all these super empowered individuals, and there'll be a lot more. And there's just no way to deal as a nation, as a culture, by sort of trying to be on the defensive, to keep being on the defensive to such a situation, because you only lose. And in this space, I think it's still sort of like 50-50. So half the people understand that they have to go to a new iteration and talk to other type of people and build new type of cybernetic systems together. And the other 50% is holding on. They think, well, we wrote the book, we wrote the Industrial Revolution, we will write this, we wrote the internet, it's still ours, we have the backbone, and sort of we will write this Internet of Things. But I don't think they will. And so what they are doing is sort of they are still bringing back instilling this huge fear that's still driving a lot of these applications. And this is then also still going into the fact that we then say, okay, these figures are good, these figures are not good, or sort of. So I think it's us. I think people, and we are a particular type of a new elite, although we don't want to say it like this, but we are. So we have to start really moving away from all the defensive sort of ideas and start building these new notions, like the programmable city notion, start building with these new types of cases, opening up the infrastructure, let things happen, sort of like let people sort of devise their own business models, going with the entitlement structures for data, like so that people can sort of start auctioning their data in the neighborhood and sort of play with that. So this is, I think, is what's happening, and so we should only focus on these new things.
Michael, did you have any other questions that you wanted to put forth?
Yes, I do, actually. So Yodit and Rob, as far as looking at open data essentially now, where it's produced in cities, it's essentially communal. It should be owned by everyone. Going back to the original slide that you had, Yodit, about the chain of command, is there any way to, the chain of command for data, is there any way to embed that authority on a device so that you don't have to go through a government structure again, it's right there at the edge? Is that possible?
Possibly. I think it probably makes it more expensive on the sensor side. So whether people will invest in a slightly more expensive sensor with kind of more memory or some sort of edge computing logic is still to be seen, because we're figuring it out. Everything is trade-offs. Obviously, it's kind of whether you have a centralized database or much more kind of loosely a loose distribution. There are trade-offs, pros and cons for both. I think it'll be interesting to see if we can. I mean, we're doing a series of kind of hands-on workshops aimed at smart cities to try to at least educate local authorities around what they can buy, not necessarily selling them anything, just saying that these are the technologies out there. You don't have to buy end-to-end solutions that are kind of, that you don't understand. You can you can look on the market and you can look at all these technologies, all these open hardware technologies, all this kind of open source application level stuff. But it is very, very slow. It's a slow and steady progress. I'm hoping that, I think that there's some really interesting projects around. I think the Array of Things, with the ones in Chicago, and there's things, kind of little I guess buds of kind of projects that are being adopted, and hopefully there's not enough money to pay for all this stuff anyway. So because of that constraint, I'm hoping that people will be forced to kind of look at these alternatives rather than going for big, multi-million pound projects. Because especially in Europe, it's all about kind of where the source of funding is, and unfortunately, it's kind of there are grants-based funding coming from the European Union or the Commission, and then there's kind of government funding, or the local authorities have tiny amounts of money to solve huge problems. So we're trying to kind of at least knowledge share, and lots of people are, but still it's quite a technical conversation. And when you're talking to someone that's trying to solve traffic, and they're a civil servant, and you're kind of going in with all these really complicated terminology, there is a huge kind of I don't really know what you're talking about kind of conversation, and we need to learn their governance, right? We need to learn how they work. So it's both sides are kind of, and that's when confusion happens, and that's when sales and marketing kind of takes over, and so. I guess the long answer is yes, it's possible, but they're kind of, I guess, realities on the ground that make it not as straightforward as it should be.
Yodit, I have actually, this is going to be maybe the last question for both you and Rob. Both of you mentioned, both of you talked about scale, and I kind of want to ask a question that gets at that. So I noticed that the project that you ended with, Yodit, was Bristol as a smart city. And Bristol, in comparison to London, for instance, is a much smaller city in population size. And Rob, you mentioned the idea of Internet of neighborhoods as opposed to cities. So what is so important, or what is the value in kind of scaling down to start with? I just kind of want to put that forth when thinking of sensor networks and thinking of the people that these sensors would affect. What makes it more valuable to think about smaller groups at first?
Well, I think the key issue is trust. So if we now see that privacy issues and security issues and all kinds of trust issues are really, of course, people are buying lots of gadgets and sort of, but we don't see the integration of anything still happening. And even if Google is going to get their line up, are people going to really buy and really trust, sort of, that, because you put your entire hand sort of like in there. So we're totally in need of an open source third-party trust provider. So, but it's going to take some time to build that, and we also don't know who will be able to do this. But until we do, on sort of like, we don't have that on a global layer, I think. There's been some research by Mr. Dr. Penton, and he came up with like 100,000 as a kind of viable sort of scale of people where you can have all kinds of services, still have a lot of social interaction, and so this is, I think, a kind of nice scale to port this internet type of neighborhood toolkit on. So you have you build a toolkit, and it can be mesh networked. And the idea is, of course, to build this federated. So in Europe, there's now a lot of money going to FiWare, and the idea is that FiWare is this set of open source tool enablers, context brokers, authentication sort of schemes, and the Commission is putting a lot of money in that. And it's basically the idea of maybe sort of setting up some kind of open source toolkit, and I see DAOs, the project going to the box, reading out to the network layer. Also, as part of this, we have a lot of open source enablers in the European projects. We have the Open IoT. There's the open/platform.eu. There's a lot of open source stuff can be found from projects like IoTA and Butler. I worked also in IoTA, which is like building this architectural reference framework. And so I think the scale is about trust. 100,000 is a kind of validated social-cultural number. So building types of, so imagine a city, and you have like all these neighborhoods. The neighborhoods choose their own priorities, and so you can build a kind of priority over there, and you can build a different priority over there. And we don't all need pollution censoring, so we can have that over there. And so this, I think, is something that that is viable. And one more thing on scale, I think to me was very important to read the work of Stinchcomb, which was basically saying that persons are like, if this is a person, then 0.6 is generic inferences and 0.4 is idiosyncrasy. So if you scale that to 1 million, it means that the 0.6 stays the same, but the 0.4 becomes 0.000004, which is how power works. So you scale to 1 million, and then you easily can say, okay, this is the dissident, this is the odd person out, this is this is that. And so, because the generic influences, you're male, you're not male, you have blue eyes, black eyes, sort of like, they stay the same. And power has always functioned with this 0.06, 0.4. I think the internet is changing the ratios to 0.5, 0.5. This is why we're also talking about individuals. So it means that individuals now have a lot more agency, and the idiosyncratic aspects of people are becoming much more important. So this is exactly what's happening, where we feel that all these tools that power works with, they're losing their grasp. We don't really care about that power anymore. We just set up our own spaces, which we're doing now. And so we leave them to sort of go with their own sort of flow and let them die, and sort of, because they've been there for a long time and they should go. And now we don't even have to worry about them sort of anymore, because, and then we should also not replicate their notion of scale, because scale actually means basically buying into that power. And this is why big is always supposedly so beautiful. So if you set up a meeting, we have Internet of Things meetups here in Ghent with 5 people, 6 people. Some people say only 6 people. Jesus, what's this? But we have great evenings for 5 or 6 people. I don't need more. I don't need one more. I just want to talk to the person, and then to a few persons, and get to know them over 10 or 15 meetups, and even try to remember their name sort of after a few, something like that, and it works. So we should not buy into these notions of scale, because scale is synonymous with the notion of power that actually wants you to go to scale, because then the management tools, which basically replicate the very notion of the system itself, just lie in waiting for you, and so you discover them. But they lie in waiting for you in order to discover them. You think you're discovering the tools, but the tools discover you. So I think we should build our Internet of Neighborhoods on a horizontal aspect of scaling, and not replicate the very faults that we saw in this basically neoliberal sort of system that was constantly aiming you in order to go big and become bigger. There's no need to become big.
And Yodit, did you want to weigh in on, in response to some of Rob's points in terms of what you're doing for Bristol?
Just to say that I totally agree. I mean, being smaller, I think you have solutions that people care about as well. London is a big place, but actually, it is a collection of very small neighborhoods, small high streets with local businesses, and when if you tried to create a solution for the whole of London, it would be fairly impossible, and you would kind of serve no one as a result, and just spend a lot of energy so. I think I've never heard of the Internet of Neighborhoods, but I really like that idea.
I got the URL. I got the URL. We could do something with it.
Yes, please. That would be amazing.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, roll out your own dashboards because every kind of the context of where we live, and it's not just about cities. I mean, rural areas will benefit from connected things, but their needs are completely different from anyone else's, and demographics are different in different parts of cities. So, small solutions that are easy to implement is really what I'd like to see over the next couple of years. So.
How are we on time?
we're a little bit over, and the person just popped in and popped out. So okay, I don't know what happened there, but I really wanted to. I think we need to close now, and thanks for that last question, Lily. I really want to thank you, Rob and Yodit, for all of these thoughts. My mind is like spinning now. There was so much here that was interesting, and it was well worth running a little over, but. And I wish I could spend some time to ask you both a bunch more questions, but we'll leave that for some follow-up. So thank you both so much. And I want to note that this particular webinar and all of the other ones previously and the one to come are you can able to find links to them on the censorjournalism.okcast.org website. We want you to join us for the last one that's next week. And we thank you for the ones that you've attended so far. And we really want to thank our media partners, the Earth Journalism Network and UC Berkeley's Citrus Center for helping us promote these events. And thank you very much, Michael, for helping us moderate today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you very much. Yes.